Today, the Environment Canterbury Commissioners have resolved to receive the report and recommendations of the independent hearing panel on the submissions and further submissions made to Plan Change 6 to the Canterbury Land and Water Regional Plan, which covers the Wairewa Lake Forsyth catchment on Banks Peninsula. And those recommendations become the decisions of the Council accordingly, and they will be publicly notified, and a period of time will elapse for potential appeals on questions of law only. Plan Change 6 is another step along the way to populating the sub-regional chapters of the Land and Water Regional Plan, which I think it's fairly well known now is developed in two parts, containing region-wide rules and sub-regional chapters, of which we already have a number, including Selwyn, Waihora and Hines, and working on Lower Waitaki, and we have a sub-regional plan in part in Huranui Waia. Plan Change 6 is the result of deliberations and discussions, and many of them carried out by the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee, of which Elizabeth Cunningham, sitting to my right, is a member. That committee developed a series of proposals for a zone implementation program addendum that covers a number of issues that were identified in this particular catchment, the Wairewa catchment, such as the community's desire to reduce sediment discharges into Lake Tauroto o Wairewa, enhancing ecosystems, understanding and reducing the flood hazards in the Little River area, setting an annual average TLI for the lake of 4 by 2035, reducing chlorophyll levels and enhancing opportunities for mahingakai and recreation. And proposals to cover all those matters were put into the ZIP addendum by the Zone Committee, and that ZIP addendum was received by the Regional Council about November 2014, and resulted in the development of the statutory part of implementing that through the sub-regional plan, Plan Change 6. So Plan Change 6 has now been through the formal submission process under the Resource Management Act, and it's fair to say that the decisions made by the Independent Hearing Commissioners have resulted in the plan change largely coming through that process with substantial parts of it, most of it in fact, intact. There have been some changes made to satisfy some of the submissions that were made, and they can be summarised really by saying that the outcomes and targets for the Te Roto o Wairewa and the Okana, Okuti and Tarakitiwai rivers and their tributaries are dealt with. There is a phosphorus load target for the lake, and there are quite strict provisions about stock exclusion, which have been modified slightly by the decisions. Phosphorus is the key water quality issue in this catchment. Whilst there are controls on nitrogen losses, there isn't a lot of that in this catchment, and indeed I think I'm right in saying there's no dairy farming currently in this catchment at all. So phosphorus is the main problem, and that arises mainly out of riverbank erosion that has occurred in the catchment, and this plan addresses that. It seeks ways in which that might be remedied on a collaborative basis between property owners. The plan facilitates that by enabling consents to be granted for a catchment-wide program of work to address riverbank erosion. The plan also addresses, as I said before, matters relating to water, to stock exclusion in the riverbeds and the tributaries in the valley floor. As a result of the submission process, the original proposal to exclude all stock of all kinds by way of prohibited activity has been slightly modified, I think it's fair to say, to enable farmers or people with sheep who want to use the waterways for watering sheep to do so, provided they get a resource consent, and secondly, to exclude from the prohibition itself areas of land that have already been fenced off around the riparian margins, so that the riparian margins inside the fences can still be used. They are relatively, as I understand it, minor amendments. They were agreed to in the course of the hearing. I don't know that there's anything more I particularly want to say about this plan change, except to say that it, I think, has the blessing of the Runanga of Wairewa, and we are very pleased about that. And I think the Zone Committee itself as a whole, Elizabeth was at a briefing with them this morning, are happy with it. And it's been a good collaborative exercise and a very good outcome.
Kia koe, Peter. I think it's only fitting that I do acknowledge Te Rinanga o Wairewa and the loss of the upoko and the previous chairman, Montero Daniels. It's unfortunate that his tangi is up in Rotorua today and tomorrow, and Wairewa couldn't be here to listen to the recommendations that were made at Environment Canterbury this morning. And so on behalf of the passing of Montero, I know that he and all the family and the Runanga will be delighted to see that the management plan is now going to look at the water quality and ensure that that occurs for their lake. It's something that they've been involved in well beyond the 6 years that the commissioners have been involved. And for that, Peter, I must say thank you for your assistance to ensure that it happens, and also on the previous Commissioner, Donald Couch. So in saying that, Peter, thank you once again for your input.
Right. Questions? Are there any? No?
I probably had just made perhaps one for each of you. perhaps for you, Peter, do you believe these measures will be an effective step towards preventing the algal blooms that are such a problem in the lake over summer?
I would like to think so. I'd like to think that is an outcome, yes. I don't know a lot about the science, but if you're addressing the phosphorus issue, I guess that's the way you do it. And that's one of the motivations for putting these rules in place. There are some matters that will have to be undertaken, such as developing a sediment trap at the head of the lake, or providing wetland mitigation or something, which is contemplated by the plan but isn't covered by a requirement as such. Those rules would permit that, and the fixing of the degradation of the river banks, I think, is something that the plan contemplates, but that will require community action. The plan facilitates it. So hopefully there will be improvements. I mean, the aspirational TLI for Te Roto Wairewa is 4, and that's now acknowledged in the plan. And I think it's currently 6, or something of that order.
And I'm sure that we can't talk about climate change in that sort of sense, but we do need a good rainfall occasionally, and I'm sure that would go a long way to assisting the improvement of the lake, of which we haven't had for quite some time.
And perhaps just a question for you, Elizabeth. Do you believe the measures in the plan change will help achieve the cultural and the Hingakai outcomes the Runanga and obviously the Zone Committee as well are looking for?
The Zone Committee are really committed to the overarching, if you like, process to ensure that mahinga kai is brought back to the lake. And I know that the Runanga members that have been involved now for the past 6 years, and as I said previous to that, this is one of the reasons why we have been involved. Ngaitahu has been involved to ensure that with the water improvement, or the quality and the quantity of water is improved, to ensure that we get our eel back, we get the inanga back, we get even patiki, flounder, everything back that was there a number of years ago.
Just timeline-wise, the appeal period, I think, expires, or will expire at some date in mid-September. I did see the timeline a minute ago. I'd be very surprised, actually, if there are any, because at the hearing I think all parties were finally in agreement on the outcomes. So assuming that is the case, we should be able to make this plan change operative really quite quickly. And then, so far as the stock exclusion rules are concerned, they will become the primary rules for this particular catchment.